Hello viewers, welcome to Rexio Hour. It is a delight to have you back. This week, we featured Irene Kaggwa Sewankambo, the Acting Executive Director of the Uganda Communications Commission, the government regulatory body of the communications sector in Uganda. Irene possesses vast professional experience spanning over 21 years in policy development, research, regulation, and implementation in various aspects of ICT development.
Irene Kaggwa is a qualified engineer. I hold a master's in communication systems and signal processing. And then I also picked interest in economics, so I hold a master's in economic management and policy. I'm the acting executive director of Uganda Communications Commission and registered engineer, and substantively the Director of Engineering and Communication Infrastructure.
We had a chat with Irene about the role of data centers in ensuring consumer data protection and privacy while operating in a regulated environment. Let us hear what she had to say.
Uganda Communications Commission was established by the Uganda Communications Act of 2013 as the regulator of the communications sector. Now, by virtue of this, we do licensing, typically of regulation. You will set rules to make sure policy is realized, to make sure national objectives are realized. You will issue licenses to make sure the players are aware of their conditions, and also that has a process of guaranteeing who's providing services to the public. And when you set rules, you want to make sure they are complied with. So we also do compliance checks, investigations to ensure that the standards, the rules that we have put in place have been complied with. And yes, for those who do not comply, we do take some enforcement action. So in a typical day, you'll find various people doing that. We also have the Universal Service and Access Fund, which we now call UCSAF. So we have interventions to ensure that we facilitate that gap between commercial operations of the licensed providers and our national aspirations as Uganda. UCC has regulatory oversight over three main sectors: telecommunications, broadcasting, and postal. Many people don't look at data communications as part of telecommunications, so we end up telling them, in addition, there's data communications and the infrastructure associated with it. So under that, we have the telecommunication providers. To some people, they only know that internet service providers. So if you don't separate that, they won't realize that even internet access providers are regulated by UCC. We have any persons involved in provision of those services or the infrastructure associated with the same. Why is it important for somebody to be regulated? Regulation, many people look at regulation as being similar to a police person or law enforcement, which is not. Regulation is almost about steering to make sure that everybody is moving in an aligned manner. So you have aspects of fair competition, aspects of consumer protection, aspects of interoperability to make sure that the networks are able to talk to each other, because without regulation, standards may not be complied with, which would mean that if you want to talk to a person on one network, you have to have a phone on that network, a person on another network, a phone on that network, rather than a situation where you can call across the networks. So the regulator comes in to ensure such standards are complied with, quality of service, other aspects that ensure that the consumer does get value for money and is protected from all the risks and other dangers that may come with their enjoyment of services. Data centers are regarded as very key in the digital transformation process. With all the digitalization, you need to be able to store your data somewhere. The same way we used to have cabinets in the analog days where you'd have so much paperwork and filing. In the digital age, you need to store the data. So data centers come in a number of aspects. They come in to facilitate, one, they also offer colocation facilities, but the core of it is providing storage. And in this era where we all recognize each entity that goes the transformation journey would need to have our own data center with all the servers and the storage, which makes it very expensive to be able to operate and walk that digital journey. But when you have shared facilities, then you reduce your cost of operations in terms of power, in terms of even the space, in terms of the reliability and availability. So to us as the communication sector, we look at data centers as very key in the process of making sure Uganda is able to achieve that digitalization. It fosters content providers to come and host in Uganda and create the services so that then people who are using those services don't have to go over international links. And we can see a reduction in cost of provision of services because of that nearness. It also reduces the cost of provision of the services on the side of providers because then they have shorter hops to connect to each other and the applications across. In addition, we see them as useful in ensuring availability of the services because the data center will have, for example, a service level agreement with its providers to make sure that its uptime is not impacted. As a consumer, once I'm used to a service, I don't want to see a jitter because maybe somewhere the link is down or an outage. We have gotten to a stage where any outage is very scary. And for some applications, that's very sensitive. So the data center comes in as an essential facility in terms of also facilitating that the data is stored locally. The risks involved with data centers in non-regulated environments are associated with two key areas. Firstly, anything that connects the internet is prone to being attacked. So in an unregulated aspect, you find that you are likely to find compromise to the different safeguards that are required to guarantee cybersecurity and also the standards that have been put in place. In a regulated environment, even if it's self-regulation, because regulation has different flavors to it, for lack of a better word. There is one where it's purely by the regulator. There is another form that's a co-regulation where, yes, the regulator comes in certain aspects, but the industry itself has other aspects that they regulate. And then the third flavor is where there is completely self-regulation. Now, in aspects of self-regulation, if there is competition, again, the risks of persons not complying becomes higher. Unlike in an aspect where there is a regulator to ensure a level playing field. The other aspects of concern would be, for example, in ensuring fairness and access. In light of the critical nature of a data center in the digital transformation space, you do not want to find unfair terms that are being provided to different providers. And that is one of the things a regulator comes in to ensure that, there's a level playing field for everybody, it is safe for everybody, the standards are, provided uniformly, and there is value for money to all the persons who are provided. There's also the risk of data protection, because who are they accountable to? There is always that need to ensure that the compliance of the law is seen through. And there's always the silent regulation. There's no world where you're completely free to do whatever you want. There's normally a law that requires some level of accountability because regulation just fosters accountability. So we come to make the persons accountable on behalf of the public. And that applies to all regulators in the different sectors. So even with data protection, that is one of the key aspects of concern when it comes to data centers. And in an unregulated environment, you will have persons worrying about, indeed, is our data protected? Is it only availed to the right parties, or is my consent achieved before that information is shared? Is it shared in accordance with the law? Because in Uganda, we have the Data Protection and Privacy Act that prescribes the circumstances under which information should be collected, processed and stored and released to other third parties.
Considering the just concluded Women's Month, describe your journey as a woman in tech since joining the industry.
But it's been an interesting journey of self-discovery, of discovering how to work with teams, complementing each other's abilities. I've had very great men working with me, and I have a team with so many women that it's amazing in terms of how many lady engineers we have in Uganda Communications Commission. So to the ladies looking and thinking, can they do it? The first thing you have to overcome is that question in your mind of, can I do it? Start with instead a statement of, I can do it. And find your abilities. Don't try to, be a superhero, a superwoman and try to do everything. Learn your abilities and accept what you cannot handle. Always knowing there's somebody who can help you for as long as you do your side. Because many times if you just sit and you become a lamenting person, everybody will bypass you. My message to all the ladies out there, don't ask, can I? Tell yourself, I can, and go do it.
Thank you for your time, Irene. Raxio Data Center would like to congratulate the newly appointed board of the Uganda Communications Commission. We remain committed to supporting and working with the Uganda Communications Commission to promote digital transformation in Uganda. Thank you for tuning in to Raxio Hour. Have a lovely weekend.